Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak podcast. Good morning. It's Monday, the 26th of January. I'm Caroline Hepker in London.
And I'm Stephen Carroll in Brussels. Coming up today, anger and political outrage mount in the United States after another American citizen is killed in an immigration crackdown.
Gold rises above $5,000 an ounce, pushed higher by a weaker dollar and global uncertainty, while markets are on alert for intervention in the Japanese yen after a sharp strengthening of the currency.
Plus, Europe's defence dilemma, the challenges of building capacity as fears over relying on the US for security grow.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Congressional Democrats are threatening a US government shutdown after federal immigration agents shot dead a second American citizen. On Saturday in Minnesota, ICE officers killed intensive care nurse Alex Pretty as they subdued him. Widely circulated videos showing the incident from multiple angles suggest that a handgun, which Pretty had a permit to carry, may have been removed from him by an agent before other officers opened fire. Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota spoke to ABC's This Week programme.
Somehow 50,000 peaceful protesters in 10 below weather, I was there with them marching, when they were able to march without any problems. And then the next day, a half a dozen ICE and Border Control agents couldn't handle a guy with a cell phone taking video of them and shot him. So I think it's pretty obvious what's going on here. And what needs to happen is they need to leave.
Senator Amy Klobuchar was speaking to ABC after Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Gregory Bavino said Alex Pretty approached officers with a handgun and violently resisted attempts to disarm him. However, neither he nor other federal officials said he had brandished the weapon.
Growing anger over the Trump administration now threatens to trigger a partial government shutdown this week. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says his party will vote against a sweeping funding package needed to keep the US government running unless Republicans strip out funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees ICE. Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California spoke on NBC's Meet the Press.
Well, I'm not giving ICE or Border Patrol another dime, given how these agencies are operating. Democrats are not going to fund that. The government will shut down if Republicans insist that that be joined with other government funding. It will be a Republican decision.
Adam Schiff speaking there, with the effects of another shutdown expected to be widespread, including possibly delaying the next Bureau of Labour Statistics report. And there are signs that some congressional Republicans are wavering. Speaking on Fox News, House Oversight Chairman James Corner suggested that President Trump should consider taking his immigration crackdown to another city.
The price of gold has surged past $5,000 an ounce for the first time. It extends a breakneck rally that's seen bullion more than double in value over the past 2 years. The latest gains come as pressure from the Trump administration on the Fed, threats to annex Greenland and the prospect of military intervention in Venezuela have fueled a flight away from sovereign bonds and currencies. And that uncertainty was underlined again this weekend after the US president threatened a 100% tariff on all Canadian goods if the country becomes what Trump described as a drop-off port for Chinese exports to the US.
The Japanese yen has extended gains against the dollar as traders start the week on alert for authorities intervening in the FX market. Coordinated currency intervention is rare, but has been fueled by comments on Sunday from Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi about addressing, quote, speculative and highly abnormal movements. Traders reported on Friday that the Federal Reserve Bank of New York had contacted financial institutions to check on the yen's exchange rate, something that is seen as a precursor to intervention.
In the UK, allies of the Prime Minister have blocked Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham from standing to become a Member of Parliament in an upcoming by-election. The decision leaves Burnham, a key rival of Keir Starmer, with no clear route to Parliament. Steve Reid, the government's Housing Secretary, says it's the wrong time for him to return to Westminster.
Well, I look forward to seeing Andy Burnham back in Parliament in due course. But right now, he's only halfway through a 4-year term as mayor. 2 million people have the right to vote in that area. They're not expecting a by-election for their mayor halfway through the term of the current mayor.
Housing Secretary Steve Reid speaking there following the 8-1 vote by Labour's National Executive Committee against the attempt in Gorton and Denton. Bloomberg understands that Keir Starmer told the panel that Burnham's standing would trigger months of psychodrama and badly damage Labour ahead of May's local elections. Posting on social media on Sunday, Andy Burnham said he was disappointed by the decision and concerned about its potential impact.
New research by Morgan Stanley says that the UK is losing more jobs than it's creating because of artificial intelligence. Bloomberg's Ewan Potts has more.
Morgan Stanley's study found AI innovations are coming at a particularly heavy cost to workers in Britain. The report surveyed firms in 5 industries that have been using AI for at least a year. It found that for many companies, tech investments are already paying off with an average 11.5% increase in productivity. But when it comes to employment, UK companies reported the highest level of net job losses of any of the countries in the survey. In London, I'm Ewan Potts, Bloomberg Radio.
And those are some of our top stories for you this morning. In terms of the markets, the Japanese yen currently surging about 1%, 154.19. There is speculation that the US may assist Japan to halt the currency's slide. This would be highly unusual, very rare for there to be either coordinated action or indeed action by the US in the FX markets. Japanese stocks have been falling sharply on the back of that. Nikkei is currently down by 1.7%. The dollar weakening against all FX majors. The other big story in markets is the surge in metals, especially gold, which is now up by 1.8% this morning, trading at $5,078. Ryanair says that it sees full year profit after tax being 2.1 to 2.2 billion euros. US natural gas futures have also surged because of the freezing weather there. They've soared above $6 for the first time since 2022. Those are the markets.
In a moment, we will bring you more on the potential backlash against the US immigration crackdown that could result in a government shutdown, plus Europe's defence dilemma back in focus after the recent tensions over Greenland. But another story that we've been reading this morning, in case you feel like you achieved nothing with your weekend, or perhaps you stayed in bed late on Sunday morning, contrast that with the climber Alex Honnold, who spent his Sunday morning climbing the Taipei 101 tower without ropes while being streamed live on Netflix. Took just over 90 minutes to climb the 508-metre building, which houses offices including the Taiwan Stock Exchange. Big achievement for him, obviously, but also for Netflix. It's part of their push into live programming. Our colleagues, though, also writing that it's a boost for Taiwan because publicity surrounding the climb are a high-profile soft power win for the island as well. It's been battling for increased international visibility amidst the, of course, ongoing campaign by China to isolate it diplomatically. So all sorts of consequences from this event, stunt, what are you going to call it?
Consequences for me, vertigo-inducing TV. I mean, I could barely watch Free Solo, which was the first time that the world really understood the powers of Alex Honnold and his skills to kind of climb without assistance, without ropes. Don't know whether you ever watched the movie in 2018. A lot of it was about his now wife, Sandy McCandless. You know, and the fact that they travelled around in this tiny van together. Anyway, it's, I don't know, climbing is, as I say, it's, my heart's palpitating just thinking about it.
Well, something that you can read more about on Bloomberg.com as well. Let's bring you more there now on our top story. The Trump administration's immigration crackdown fueling growing outrage in the US after a Border Patrol agent shot and killed the 37-year-old nurse Alex Pretty in Minneapolis on Saturday. Joining us now with more details is Bloomberg's Tiwa Adebayo. Tiwa, good morning. What has been the impact then of this shooting so far?
This is the second time this month that ICE agents in Minnesota have been involved in a fatal shooting. It comes just weeks after the shooting of US citizen Renee Good in Minneapolis. So just a recap of what happened over the weekend. In terms of what ICE is saying took place, Gregory Bovino, who is the Border Control Commander at Large, said that a man approached Border Patrol officers with a semi-automatic handgun and then, he says, violently resisted attempts to disarm him. He also says that the agent then fired defensive shots. That's according to a statement that he's made. We've heard President Trump, who took to Truth Social quickly afterwards as well, defending the federal officials involved. But this version of events has, of course, been widely disputed by others, including Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz and also the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, who have emphasized that a number of videos of the event that are circulating widely on social media. And Tim Walz has called ICE's statement nonsense and lies. We've also heard in a statement from the parents of Alex Pretty, who have refuted Trump's claims. But just in terms of the political impact, this is raising a lot of difficult questions in Minnesota and also for the US at large. We're now seeing this sort of standoff situation between authorities in the states and the federal government. President Trump has accused Tim Walz and Jacob Frey of inciting insurrection with their rhetoric, and he's also suggesting now that the two have instructed local police not to protect or aid ICE agents. There are other politicians that we've heard from as well in the Trump administration. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who's called Alex Pretty a domestic terrorist and argued that he was actually impeding the work of the border control. But there's also this question of the Second Amendment right to bear arms. We've even heard from the National Rifle Association, who are traditionally a Republican-leading organization, and they've called for a full investigation into the shooting and described the suggestion of a federal prosecutor that people who carry guns have the risk of being lawfully shot by officers as dangerous and wrong. So this incident is really bringing up wider constitutional questions which affect all Americans. But just quickly on the business impact as well, there's been a significant impact in that respect. We've heard from more than 60 CEOs of companies based in the state in an open letter. They're calling for immediate de-escalation of tensions. Those companies include names like Target and Cargill. But it does seem like normal life has almost sort of ground to a halt in Minnesota. Even an NBA game scheduled for the weekend had to be postponed. Reports of federal agents using tear gas and other violent crowd control techniques. So it seems the situation is definitely far from calm in Minnesota.
No, absolutely. An absolute furore, really. In terms of what this means for a US government shutdown, I mean, the political consequences, they also kind of throw the finances now of the government into question, don't they?
Yeah, so we've been brought to this situation which some may have called unimaginable perhaps at the start of the year, the prospect of another government shutdown. And that's because this shooting has happened in the wake of some unpopular actions by the Trump administration, including aggression towards Venezuela, over Greenland, and now these incidents in Minnesota have sort of raised tensions in Congress to new heights. We've seen Senate Democrats sort of digging in against this bill, which regards funding for the Department of Homeland Security. That was expected to pass this week as a final part of a package for this fiscal year. But now Senate Democrats are saying that they don't want to fund this bill. They don't want to vote for it. And that means the fate of the larger package is now uncertain as well. So Democrats are calling for new restrictions on ICE and a full investigation into the shooting. And they're also calling for the Department of Homeland Security bill to be separated from the rest of the package. But of course, doing so would cause new delays. So that situation is also very uncertain.
OK, Tiwa Adebayo, thank you very much for joining us with the latest. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this.
Now, last week's tensions between the US and Europe over Greenland have again highlighted the security challenges that the continent faces and its reliance on the United States. The new US National Defense Strategy, published on Friday, restates American priorities for Europe to take on more responsibility for its own defences. Our Brussels Bureau Chief Suzanne Lynch joins us for more now. Has the ramping up of threats against Greenland from the US changed the conversation in Europe about defence in terms of both spending and also autonomy from the United States? I mean, how much has it ratcheted up that change?
I think it has. I think the events last week have really shaken the European scene. and decision makers in Brussels and across the continent. As you said there, I mean, this conversation about Europe's need to ramp up defence has been happening for a few years, for almost 4 years now, as we approach that anniversary of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And there has been a lot of change. And we've seen a huge shift in attitudes towards spending, for example, from Germany, which is really culturally as well as defence-wise very, very significant, given that it's the biggest power, and because of historic reasons there was always a reluctance by Germany to lead on this. We also saw the NATO summit last year in the summer in The Hague, which saw member states and members of NATO commit to greater spending on defence. So there's been a lot more, but I think what's happened last week is the realisation. I mean, I think all leaders meeting in Brussels on Thursday night were united in the realisation that Europe needs to stand on its own when it comes to the economy and when it comes to defence. But of course, how to do that is a bit more tricky.
And Suzanne, there have been efforts, as you say, being made across the continent to ramp up investment in defence. Of course, the increased commitment to NATO spending as well. But the European Union's also been trying to help member states with this effort as well. How effective have those plans been so far?
Yes, I mean, the EU and Ursula von der Leyen has said a lot that she is now focused on defence as an issue. However, look, being honest, Stephen, I mean, the EU is limited in what it can do in defence. This is more a challenge for NATO, I think. Now, the EU has set up some programmes, the SAFE loan programme, for example, where countries, and in some cases third-party countries, can apply for loans, if you like, to fund defence. That is new. That has been had a huge take-up, for example. That's positive in terms of the EU trying to kickstart defence spending. But ultimately, it becomes a decision for budgets and national capitals, national governments, who are trying to always compete with different priorities when it comes to spending. But we have seen individual countries increase their spending on this sector. But look, there are lots of problems with the European defence sector, particularly its fragmented nature and its dependence on the US. And look, one of the issues that's emerged from last week is the question: can Europe continue to depend on US, not in terms of just a reliable partner in NATO, but actually as a producer and provider of defence equipment? A lot of the defence infrastructure in countries are dependent on the US. For example, Alexander Stubb, the Finnish president, said last week that his country's fleet of US-made fighters needs the United States. They can't fly without the US because they need spare parts and hardware and software updates. There's conversations going on in the UK now about how interdependent they are for the US, and is the US a reliable partner in the same way when it comes to defence? So a lot of challenges facing the sector.
Yeah, there are. All of this happening as the diplomatic efforts to try to end the war in Ukraine have accelerated. There have been these trilateral talks which have involved the US over the weekend, but then how much progress has been made?
Yeah, I mean, Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, gave a press conference in Lithuania on Saturday, and he said the progress had been made during the talks, but he said a deal does still need compromise. So US officials were calling these talks in Abu Dhabi constructive, and on February the 1st there will be a resumption of discussions in some way. So look, a lot of what he was saying was repeating what he'd said the previous week, that really Ukraine and the US have agreed to this kind of a post-war structure, this agreement. Obviously, Russia has not yet. But look, all of this is taking place as Ukraine is under pressure from Russia, which has launched thousands now of attack drones on Kiev. The city and other parts of Ukraine have been under pressure as they faced power outages due to these huge Russian airstrikes. So look, I think it's an illustration of how much is at stake here still in this war.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.